Let's get into some injury news. NFL Network's Mike Garafolo reports Week 1 should be realistic for Joe Burrow after he suffered that scary-looking calf strain in camp. That video was, everybody thinks the worst right away. Fortunately for Burrow, he avoided the worst. Should be ready for Week 1. It feels like Burrow, though, misses camp every single year at this point, unfortunately.
Yeah, and it hasn't mattered, right?
Yeah,
4,000 passing yards, 30 touchdowns each of the past 2 seasons. Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, the only other 2 people that can say that. He's my QB4. Until we know that that he would miss time, he's going to stay at QB4. But certainly, very concerning, very, very concerning when when they were bringing out the cart.
A lot of Twitter doctors up and about.
Literally, people branded
that's an
Twitter
Achilles. That's
doctors.
a torn Achilles.
Career's over right away.
Seems like he will be fine.
Yep.
Last year he didn't start off well, is the one thing, because he did miss camp, but he had 5 picks against Pittsburgh in Week 1.
And the Jets lost, which in retrospect doesn't look as bad as it did back then. But in the beginning of the year, right, they lost to the Jets.
No, they beat the Jets.
They beat the Jets in Week 3. They lost to the Steelers?
They also the Cowboys as well.
Cowboys. I thought
without Dak Prescott.
Did they barely beat the Jets beat there was the Browns game that I was thinking about. Okay, sorry. Anyways, we see video here. It all runs together for me. This is that's him holding his calf.
Already wearing the calf sleeve too while this happened.
That's the cart. That's everyone else looking on, very concerned. Not good.
I would say, and I'm going to say this repeatedly until the season starts, if you bet on the NFL, you need to have a Patrick Mahomes MVP ticket at plus 700, because this is just another reason, this Burrow thing, why it's just a ridiculous price. Plus 700 means that he's like a 12% chance to win MVP. He's going to be the greatest player of all time, Patrick Mahomes. It's ridiculous. He should just be plus 200 every single year, and that's my ride or die bet. Patrick Mahomes plus 700. It's just absurd. It's Patrick Mahomes. Right. He's going to win every second year for the next decade. Anyway, Patrick Mahomes.
All right, MVP. I like that. I like that bet. Yeah. I like that bet.
In some more positive injury news, John Lynch, 49ers GM, said Brock Purdy, who's been dealing with the elbow injury, has been cleared to practice and is ready to go. A lot of people after the signing of Sam Darnold and Trey Lance is still there. We're wondering if Purdy would be ready to start the season, but he's already throwing in camp.
Which is great news. This is great news. I mean, again, when he took over from Week 13 on last year, Brock Purdy was the 10th best quarterback in fantasy. I think people don't realize this. He averaged over 17 fantasy points per game. He played at least he had at least 2 touchdown passes in every single game he played, where he played the majority of snaps. All 6 of those games, obviously, he went undefeated. Jay and I both think that Kyle Shanahan got screwed out of Coach of the Year because of that. Everyone was like, Nick Sirianni. Nick Sirianni went 0-2 with Gardner Minshew.
Yeah.
He
went 6-0 with the last pick in the draft. I know they've got a lot of good players on that team, but still, that's insane. Though, I don't know if it's because I'm Australian or something, but I don't understand how everyone has just moved on from Trey Lance. When time last year, we were talking about Trey Lance. Is he going to be the next Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes MVP out of nowhere? He's the 3rd pick in the draft. He had all the hype in the world coming into last season. He plays in a monsoon against Chicago in Week 1. Then he breaks his ankle Week 2. Hasn't thrown up, and now he's just done. Yeah. I don't understand it. Explain it.
Here's the other part that I don't understand. No one's talking about Sam Darnold. Wait, again, we joked about. No, hang on. We joked about the report, he's got the prettiest pass of any 49 quarterback ever. We're like, did Steve Young and Joe Montana play for different quarterbacks? Colin Kaepernick.
Kaepernick threw a great ball.
Kaepernick threw a great ball. Anyway, that said, hyperbole aside, the fact of the matter is that Kyle Shanahan won with Jimmy Garoppolo. He won with Brock Purdy. What makes you think he can't win with Sam Darnold, who also was a top 3 pick in the NFL and has had some success? He's also had some bad moments. I get that. On some bad Jets teams, and Carolina was a mess as well. But if Sam Darnold gets the job and is good in a Kyle Shanahan offense, would that shock anyone? I don't think there is, because Connor, you're the guy to talk. But when Sam Darnold was drafted as high as he was, no one was like, wait, that guy? Everyone had him as the number 1 quarterback.
But he was going over Baker that year.
That's right.
Until 2 days before the draft.
Right.
The talent is never the problem with Darnold. I think what's the issue is always the mental, and Kyle Shanahan's greatest gift is limiting the mental mistakes of a quarterback. I mean, he did it. Purdy had the same issues at Iowa State. Purdy was a 4-year starter at Iowa State, and turnovers and decision-making were a massive problem. He plays for the 49ers, and everything is schemed up for him to succeed. There's no reason to think Darnold can at least be capable in that offense, I think, is what we're looking for.
On that as well, I will say, I had a big bet on Kyle Shanahan at 40-1 to win Coach of the Year. So I was riding or dying, ultimately dying, with the 49ers every single game. I think watch every single snap of Brock Purdy play. He does not fill you with confidence when you watch him.
Wild ride.
He makes some excellent throws, and overall it was great from Brock Purdy. He makes some crazy throws as well in a bad way. So I don't understand how everyone is just anointed.
He definitely got lucky.
Yes.
A few, like in terms of interceptions that should have been got dropped and everything like that. He definitely got lucky. Now, in fairness to Brock Purdy, he was a rookie, and the third string rookie. He probably didn't get a lot of reps, and all of a sudden they're like, oh, by the way, we're a playoff-bound team, and now you've got to start every snap. So he's had a whole offseason to absorb the playbook, which is complicated. Kyle Shanahan's, I remember Matt Ryan talking about it took Matt Ryan, who's probably a borderline Hall of Famer, 2 years to understand Shanahan's playbook. So I want to give Brock Purdy a little bit of...
For sure. He came in a very difficult situation and was very solid from the get-go.
Right. He didn't, again, went undefeated. He didn't lose it for them. But I saw some tweet from somebody, and I forget who it was, so I apologize, not me, but the tweet was like, listen, you guys aren't prepared for the fact that Sam Darnold's starting a Super Bowl this year. Yeah. You know what I mean? And like that's not outside the realm of possibility. Like, I don't mind a late round draft. If you're in a two-quarterback league, in a deep two-quarterback league, I don't mind a last-round flyer on Sam Darnold. I think if I had a draft today, I think you're drafting Brock Purdy as the starter for the 49ers. But I agree with you, Jay, that I think your point is like, I don't feel like this is written in stone. Like, there's definitely no way that somebody other than Brock Purdy is starting week 1 for the Niners.
Yeah, they're just a weird team. I feel like the Niners might be the most insulated team against injury ever, because they've got 3 quarterbacks in. And it's like, well, if they got either of those 3 guys, I'm sure they'll just be fine.
When someone gets hurt, they don't drop off a cliff like everyone else.
Yeah. The only pushback I would say there is that offense with Trey Lance is really different than that offense with Brock Purdy or Sam Darnold.
Yep.
And they've had the idea when they drafted Trey Lance was we want to go to a mobile quarterback and do a lot more RPOs and everything like that. And then they because of injuries, whatever, it's just like, all right, we're back to the,
drop back
3-step, 5-step, 7-step, drop back passer, pocket passer. And that's what Purdy is, and that's what Garoppolo was, and that's what Darnold is. Darnold's a little bit more mobile, but and so that offense is currently built with, a drop back passer in mind, and candidly, the versatility doesn't come from the quarterback, but from McCaffrey and Deebo Samuel.
Yep.
Staying in the division with Seattle, they're already dealing with multiple running back injuries. Pete Carroll had this to say on both Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet not practicing. With Kenneth Walker, he's sidelined with a groin injury. With Charbonnet, he's out indefinitely with a shoulder injury. Jay, they've spent a lot of draft capital in this duo. Kenneth Walker, a second-round pick 2 years ago. Zach Charbonnet, a second-round pick this year. I mean, this doesn't sound like these guys are going to be back really anytime soon with a full workload.
Yeah, and I mean, it seems like they're going to be okay for week 1 at this point, though it's not exactly clear. The one thing I'll say, if I was to tell anyone who's start betting on the NFL, the one thing that you need to know is that Pete Carroll lies about injuries. And you just have no idea what is going to happen with the Seattle Seahawks week to week. We've got guys who are a week away and then you don't see them for 2 months.
Right.
You've got guys who are supposed to be fine and then they're just not. So I don't know what to read into this because I have no idea whatever is going on in Seattle.
Do you ever see the old, you guys are much younger than me, so maybe you haven't, but did you ever see the old Monty Python movie? I want to say it was Life of Brian, where it's just the famous scene where he's like, he cuts off the guy's arm. All right, fight's over. What? No, it's just a flesh wound.
Yeah, it's flesh wound.
It's just a flesh wound. Your arm's cut off. Let's go. And I believe that scene was written by Pete Carroll. Yeah. Like, in all seriousness, because it is, you are absolutely right. Like, somebody could break their leg, and Pete's like, he's going to be limited in practice today. But, he should be back out there. Like, Pete's the most optimistic of any head coach ever. And yes, and will flat out lie about injuries. Like, just doesn't care. Like, so hard to say here. It'll be interesting to see if they sign a veteran or not. Like, because there's certainly a number of them out there, and you could see them doing it. If they don't, and the Charbonnet injury is more serious than it's being led on, Ken Walker is massively undervalued because this is going to be a good offense. This is going to be a good offense, and the only reason that Ken Walker's ADP is as low as it is, he's currently my running back 18, is because we expect Zach Charbonnet to get at least 35% of the snaps here.
A lot of pass game work.
Right, if not more. Right now, as you see the depth chart right now, it's DJ Dallas, who's much more of a third down back, a smaller guy, and Kenny McIntosh,
who was borderline a receiver for Georgia. He's a pass-catching running back only.
Right.
Rookie, undrafted rookie or late-round rookie.
So other than Walker, if Charbonnet's out for a decent amount of time, they don't have a between-the-tackles guy, really.
Not at all.
And again, Pete likes to run it. So I wouldn't be surprised. I could see them, that'd be a place that Zeke makes a lot of sense. If Charbonnet is out for a significant amount of time.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of chatter on Twitter, X, whatever, about Kenny McIntosh and DJ Dallas. I would not be drafting those guys. No. These injuries don't seem serious enough. The talent upside doesn't seem significant enough for those two that I think you just got to wait it out. And Ken Walker is the guy who, even though he's hurt at the moment, he seems the most likely to benefit from this situation.
He's somebody else that played hurt last year too, if you remember. And I remember, I think it was a Thursday night game against San Francisco where we're like, he was hurt and he didn't practice all week and it's a short week turnaround, and still against that tough Niners defense, grinded out, had a decent game, much better than he had any right to on no practice, less than 100% against the Niners.
And he was hurt almost all last summer, too. So this is just kind of the Kenneth Walker experience right now. Over in Denver, NFL Network's James Palmer reports Javonte Williams, who's coming back from significant knee injury, will avoid the active/PUP list to begin training camp. Williams, who tore his ACL, has been cleared for contact, but is unsure if he will play at all in the preseason, Barry.
Yeah, and just the fact that he's going to avoid the physically unable to perform list doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to be playing week one, that he's going to get a full complement of snaps week one, that he's going to be any good week one. Again, we've seen this. We've seen this from Dalvin Cook. We've seen this from Saquon Barkley. We've seen this from running backs that, after a massive injury, don't have that spark immediately. Even if they're out there, it feels like they're running in second gear. They're just not, they're just sort of running a little bit slower. They just don't have that burst, that explosiveness here. And so I could see Javonte Williams being a monster down the stretch, just being a fantasy difference maker down the stretch. But I still think, and I see so many people on X sitting here going oh, Javonte Williams, he's back. And I'm like, I'd much rather invest on Samaje Perine at ADP than Javonte Williams right now. I'm buying the Denver offense, by the way. I do think they bounce back. I'm buying a bounce back from Russ. I'm buying a bounce back from that offense. I think they're going to be good. But, Perine, who's going in the 30s, to me represents a much better value than Javonte Williams, whose ADP will continue to rise as, positive reports from camp emerge.
Yep, Perine right now going as running back 37 after guys like Charbonnet and Antonio Gibson, A.J. Dillon, David Montgomery, these types. I think Perine's got a decent amount of upside, certainly at the start of the season.
Yeah, I mean, I have Javonte Williams at running back 31. Just to, and I'm not moving off that. I think he's a number 4 running back to start the season, and then I think over the second half of the year when he gets back to full health, then he'll be back to the guy everyone remembers from his rookie year.
Breece Hall also working his way back from a torn ACL last season. Robert Saleh said he looks really good. Saleh also said he expects Hall to return in a couple of weeks, as in playing. They've had Hall measuring really well in the GPS since spring, so he's been sprinting, but actually playing in a couple of weeks. The Jets are saying that he's going to be ready for week one, but then you have all the interest in Dalvin Cook that kind of signals how much of a workload are they actually going to put on Breece Hall the first month of the season?
Yeah, I mean, listen, you're the Jets guy, so you tell me on this how much of this is. But I do think, again, I think the interest in Dalvin Cook is also just you're a dynamic player, and we're obviously pushing all the chips in for this year. And so if we can get, all due respect to Michael Carter or Bam Knight, if we can add you to the backfield with Breece Hall, even a fully healthy Breece Hall, that's a good thing, right?
What's the first half of the season? What's the maximum carries Breece Hall is going to get in a game? Is it 14? Is he going to top that in the first half of the season?
Right, and they like to throw to him so much, and that's going to affect the actual touches workload. I think they care about what Breece Hall looks like end of October to the end of the season, not what Breece Hall looks like in September. And yes, their schedule is very hard out of the gate. There's no denying that, but if you can bring in a veteran that's handled a large workload like Cook, it allows you to use Breece at your own pace to start the season. So they're saying all the right things. Breece is hitting metrics, GPS-wise, speed-wise. His game's built on speed that are very promising. But the history and science of ACL injuries tells us that you shouldn't expect what we saw peak Breece Hall in September or maybe even the beginning of October this year. And they want to protect the young player from himself.
Yeah, no, which makes a ton of sense. And so I feel better about Breece Hall than I do Javonte Williams in terms of where they are in their rehab, in terms of where their injuries happened. But again, yes, you'd sort of be like, I would not want to go into the season needing to count on Breece Hall as one of my top 2 running backs. You're probably going to have to draft him there, which makes me a little bit nervous.
That's the tricky part.
That's the tricky part. But I will say that I think, assuming Dalvin Cook signs, that will depress Breece Hall's ADP to where it should be.
Exactly. I'm with you all the way on that. Over with the Chiefs, Andy Reid said Kadarius Toney underwent knee surgery. Chiefs beat writer Pete Sweeney said on the Roto World Football Show that Toney would likely be sidelined for weeks, not days. The Kadarius Toney experience, Jay, rolls on.
Yeah, just out on Kadarius Toney completely. I mean, it's just something every second or third week with Toney. It just seems like he is a guy, as we look at his injury history, which is just a litany of injuries, mainly to every part of his body, really. Shoulder, hamstring, ankle, quad oblique, knee, hamstring, knee. So I just don't think that he's a guy that you can rely on if you draft him. I think if you're looking at high upside receivers in Kansas City, I'd be much more interested in Sky Moore.
I hear you on Sky Moore, and we've seen some nice camp moments from Rashee Rice,
absolutely,
Justin Watson as well. Richie James is apparently having the greatest camp of his life, and it is worth noting that last year the Chiefs were second in the NFL in slot targets. But I mean, honestly, guys, I think it's super weird. Like, if Kadarius Toney were healthy, I'd be interested in him because I do think he's a special talent.
Yes,
he needs to stay on the field, but in that offense, they would have created some touches for him. But listen, I think that this upcoming season, I think there's going to be 3 games where MVS, and we haven't even really seen MVS out there, right? There'll be 3 games where MVS has a monster game, right? And there's going to be 4 huge Sky Moore games and 1 great Richie James game. And it's going to be death by 1,000 cuts when you play the Chiefs, but it's really going to be, for us in the world of fantasy football, it's going to be Mahomes, it's going to be Kelsey, it's going to be the 2 running backs, and that's sort of it.
Yep.
Unless there's going to be significant injuries or we see we feel really good about they're playing a team that really gives up a ton of slot and slot receptions, and Richie James has been getting a lot of work, and whatever. Kadarius Toney is out, and it's hard to really pick any one of these guys. I'm with you. Sky Moore has the most upside.
Yeah, just the most interesting.
Outside of Kadarius Toney, I've always been, sort of semi-obsessed with Justin Watson, who I feel. What? No,
it's one of your boys.
He's on my dynasty. He's on a dynasty team of mine, a crazy deep dynasty league that I have. I feel like every time he gets on the field, he makes a play. He just can't get on the field. I mean, because they have 8 billion guys.
How is Breece Hall going before Travis Etienne and Joe Mixon in drafts? To me, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, people
it's
are
very
morons.
inflated.
That's insane.
People are morons.
His ADP has been way too high. Yeah. And I love Breece, but it's just
that's
the
crazy.
longevity.
He's going
the
same spot as Ramondre Stevenson. Yeah. That's completely insane.
Completely insane.
Okay.
People are morons.
Sorry. Let's move on.
Not you watching at home.
Nobody watching this.
Other people, the people that don't watch this, they're the morons. You guys.
Barry, you mentioned the Chiefs' running back room. Isaiah Pacheco said he'll absolutely be ready for Week 1. This is after sustaining hand and labrum injuries in the AFC Championship game last January. Pacheco has been described by coaches and beat writers as iffy to start the regular season, and the Athletic's Nate Taylor confirms Pacheco is expected to be the starter and handle an increased workload.
Yeah, be great. and then Jerick McKinnon will be his. But I think people forget how much Pacheco during the playoffs caught the ball more than I think people expected him to. And so I have Pacheco at 27, again, just because I think McKinnon's going to be more involved. But I like Pacheco. I like that offense. I like, to your point about your favorite bet is Mahomes at plus 700 for MVP. What are the odds of the Chiefs winning the Super Bowl this year again?
Yeah, plus 600.
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty good bet. I mean, again, I don't know that they're going to. It's hard to repeat, but the Chiefs are going to be one of the best offenses in the NFL, and Pacheco and McKinnon are both going to be, pretty good this year.
Isaiah Pacheco had 15 carries in the Super Bowl. So that tells you what they think of him. They're letting him run 15 times in the Super Bowl when they were pretty much losing the entire game as well. So yeah, I think he's got a lot of upside.
I mean, remember, this is a guy that I think he was a 7th round pick out of Rutgers, right?
Yeah, very late.
Yeah, I mean, very, very. So not a lot of draft capital. They already had Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So it took him a while to sort of trust Isaiah Pacheco. But over the final 9 games of last year, from week 10 on, Isaiah Pacheco was top 5 in the NFL in rushing yards. And oh, by the way, he plays for one of the highest scoring offenses in the NFL. So I might be too low on. I have Pacheco at 27, and I think I'm too low on him.
Yeah, I think people are also. I know McKinnon he had great fantasy stats from last year. He also had 8 receiving touchdowns in the last 6 games of the season. That is completely unsustainable.
Correct.
So I think that is maybe suppressing Pacheco's perception a little bit.
Yeah, Pacheco or McKinnon. And this is coming from somebody who has McKinnon in Dynasty and not Pacheco. Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBC Sports and RotoWorld.com. Just want to thank you so much for watching what you just watched, or at least being too lazy to click out of it after the autoplay just kept it going. So either way, thank you so much for just letting it scroll by your screen. And now I'd like to ask you respectfully, okay, please subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel for the latest NFL news, fantasy headlines from RotoWorld, and betting analysis from NBC Sports Edge.